Why is it that some men, no matter how smart or accomplished, never earn the respect of women? This question haunted Nietzsche, and it still echoes today in the lives of men who feel unseen, dismissed, or quietly judged. The reality is brutal. You can have sharp ideas, high ambition, and even a kind of brilliance, yet find that women look past you, unimpressed. Nietzsche's life was proof. He wrote books that shook the foundations of Western thought, yet in his personal relationships, he was rejected again and again. Women did not admire him as he believed they should. Instead of respect, he faced silence, pity, or withdrawal. The truth is, respect does not come from intellect alone, nor from the force of ideals, but from something more grounded. Women respond to presence, to a man who respects himself beyond performance and beyond words. Nietzsche, for all his genius, failed to see that the respect he demanded could not be wrestled out of others through brilliance or power. And here lies the uncomfortable mirror for men today. Many are still trying to be respected by being louder, smarter, or more forceful, when in reality, the missing piece is simple but hard: authenticity that does not collapse into arrogance or self-pity. Nietzsche never found this, and so he lived admired by readers but never respected by the women closest to him. This contradiction is where his philosophy meets the raw truth of human connection. Respect is not something you can demand. It is something that appears in the way people respond to you. And for Nietzsche, this absence of respect from women was not hidden. It was obvious. He was a man who walked alone, writing words that challenged nations. Yet in his private life, he faced a silence that spoke louder than any applause. You can see this in his repeated failures in love, in the rejection that came not once, but several times, each time cutting deeper into his pride. It was not that he was ignored by everyone. He was admired in academic circles and among young thinkers. But women close to him kept their distance, not with anger, but with the quiet clarity that they did not see in him what he believed he carried. This reality is still present today. How many men build careers, collect degrees, or become experts in their fields, only to realize that none of it changes the way women respond to them personally? The truth is that respect in relationships is not about achievements on paper. It is about the living presence that someone feels when they are with you. Nietzsche could not understand why his greatness on the page did not translate into respect at the table. He thought his thoughts should carry the same weight in the heart of another, but they did not. And this is why this story matters beyond philosophy. It shows the divide between how we see ourselves and how we are actually seen. A divide that many men discover in silence, when the people they want to impress most remain unmoved. Nietzsche's torment was not just his rejections, but the deeper truth they revealed, that respect cannot be written, it must be lived. Nietzsche lived behind a mask, one carefully shaped by words, posture, and the image of the untouchable thinker who stood above the crowd. He built this mask because the world around him was quick to dismiss weakness, and he knew that to be taken seriously, he had to appear as if nothing could shake him. But a mask always cracks when life presses too hard. In the quiet moments, away from the stage of philosophy, he was a man struggling with loneliness, poor health, and a body that often betrayed him. The mask gave him protection in public, yet it also isolated him, because those who looked at him did not see the man. They only saw the performance. This is a reality many people live even today, not only philosophers but ordinary men and women who carry themselves in ways they hope will command respect while hiding the insecurities that gnaw at them. The irony is that masks rarely inspire the respect they are meant to earn. They usually invite suspicion. People sense when someone is posturing, when their strength is a costume instead of a lived reality. Nietzsche believed the mask of superiority would make women admire him, but instead, it pushed them further away. because no one wants to be in a relationship with a mask. This truth does not change across time. Even now, when someone hides too deeply behind roles, titles, or crafted identities, others may nod politely, but the respect that matters never arrives. Nietzsche shows us how the very thing we use to protect ourselves from rejection can become the reason rejection never leaves. The mask of the philosopher promised power, but in practice it left him more alone than ever. Rejection leaves marks that no amount of brilliance can erase, and for Nietzsche, it became a shadow that followed him everywhere. When Lou Salome turned down his proposal, it was not only a personal disappointment, but a wound that dug into his very sense of worth. She admired his mind, yet she did not choose him, and this gap between admiration and intimacy became unbearable. Instead of accepting the pain and moving forward, Nietzsche allowed rejection to reshape his view of women, transforming his personal hurt into sweeping claims that disguise the vulnerability behind them. This is something we still see today, when men or women who have been denied love turn their frustration into general statements about the opposite sex, blaming an entire group for what was, in truth, a personal experience. The shadow of rejection is powerful because it whispers a false story, telling us that our value is destroyed when someone says no, when in reality, rejection only means that a certain connection was not possible. Nietzsche could not make this distinction. His wounds spoke louder than his reason, and his bitterness coded his philosophy. The reality is that rejection is universal, but how we carry it defines everything. Some accept it as part of life and continue with an open heart, while others let it close them off, trapping them in the very loneliness they fear. Nietzsche fell into the second path, and his shadow became heavier each time he tried to disguise it with contempt. Respect from women never came to him, not because he lacked intelligence, but because the bitterness of rejection replaced the openness that respect requires. In the end, it was not women who shaped this distance, but the way he carried his shadow. Nietzsche often looked at women not as individuals with their own depth, but as mirrors that reflected back the strength or weakness of men, and this view shaped both his philosophy and his relationships. He believed that a man's vitality was confirmed in how women responded to him, which meant that when he was rejected, he read it not as a matter of compatibility, but as evidence of his own insufficiency, or worse, as proof of women's cunning. This way of thinking turned relationships into power struggles rather than genuine encounters. Instead of meeting another human being, he saw a stage where his value was measured and tested. Many people today still fall into this trap, treating love and respect as battles of dominance, as if the goal is to win validation rather than to connect. But the reality is that no one respects someone who only sees them as a tool to prove their own worth. Women in Nietzsche's life felt this imbalance, sensing that his attention was less about them and more about what they symbolized for him. And this is why respect never came. When a person is treated like a mirror, they eventually step away because nobody wants to live as someone else's reflection. The lesson here stretches far beyond Nietzsche. If we reduce others to measures of our strength, we end up alone, chasing reflections that never give back what we want. Respect arises not when we demand to be validated, but when we allow others to be fully themselves, free from the role of confirming our power. Nietzsche never learned this, and so the mirrors he sought kept breaking, leaving him with fragments of admiration, but never the substance of respect. When Nietzsche wrote harsh lines about women, they did not rise from calm reflection, but from pain that had never been processed. And this is why they sound less like philosophy and more like confession. His famous claim that women were shallow or deceptive did not reveal eternal truths about gender. It revealed the bitterness of a man who felt unwanted and unseen. What makes this significant is how personal wounds can harden into public doctrines. We see the same pattern in life today when someone takes their disappointment in a single relationship and turns it into a story about how all men or all women are. Nietzsche's contempt was not born in reason, but in the echo of his own rejection, and once it entered his work, it gained the authority of philosophy, even though its roots were only human hurt. This is the danger of unhealed wounds. They spread, they disguise themselves as wisdom, and they convince us that our pain is not ours alone, but a universal law. The result is not clarity, but distortion. Nietzsche gave voice to his scar, and history has remembered it as thought, when in truth, it was grievance. The reality is that bitterness never earns respect. It may silence a room for a moment, but it never creates trust or admiration. Women did not respect Nietzsche because they could feel the sharpness of his resentment, and no one wants to stand close to a person whose words are poisoned by anger. His legacy reminds us that the way we carry our wounds shapes how others respond to us. Healing creates presence, but unhealed pain only breeds hostility, and hostility never attracts respect. It only drives it further away. Nietzsche built around himself an image of superiority, a persona that carried the air of someone above ordinary life. Yet this posture was one of the reasons women never gave him the respect he longed for. Superiority can impress at a distance, but up close, it often feels like arrogance, and arrogance rarely invites warmth. People can sense when someone is not relating to them as equals, but as spectators in the theater of their greatness. Nietzsche spoke and wrote as if he were addressing humanity from a mountain peak, but relationships require the opposite, a step down into the ordinary space where two people can meet without one towering over the other. This is where the persona of the superior man collapses. Many men even today make the same mistake, believing that if they can appear untouchable, women will admire them, when in reality, most women see through the performance and turn away. Respect is not born from the act of elevating oneself above others. It comes from the strength to remain grounded while still carrying conviction. Nietzsche could not bridge this gap, and so his superiority became a cage. It protected him from humiliation, but it also kept him from intimacy. The irony is that the more he tried to project authority, the less he was trusted in private, because respect cannot grow in a space where one person insists on standing higher than the other. The persona gave him a sense of control, but at the cost of connection. In the end, women respected the words he wrote, but they did not respect the man behind them, because superiority without humility never feels like strength. It feels like distance, and distance leaves no room for respect to live. For centuries, poets and thinkers have spoken of the feminine as a source of mystery, creation, and renewal. Yet when women are reduced to symbols, their real presence disappears. Nietzsche misread this truth by treating women as forces to be analyzed rather than people to be understood. And this mistake still repeats itself today in countless ways. Women are often spoken of as enigmas, praised as goddesses, or condemned as temptresses, but rarely are they allowed to stand simply as individuals with their own voices. The reality is that respect fades the moment someone is turned into an idea instead of being seen as they are. Many men claim to admire women while never truly listening to them, never granting them the dignity of being ordinary human beings with contradictions and complexity. Women sense this distance quickly, because admiration without understanding feels hollow, almost like flattery that hides a lack of depth. Respect cannot grow from projection. It grows only when a woman is acknowledged in her reality, not as an idealized muse or a feared deceiver, but as someone whose presence is not bound to a role created in a man's imagination. This is why so many women withdraw when faced with men who treat them as archetypes, because no one wants to be trapped in someone else's myth. The misunderstanding of the eternal feminine continues to harm relationships. not because women are difficult to grasp, but because people refuse to release the illusions they place upon them. The truth is simple. Women do not want to be worshipped or condemned. They want to be respected for who they are. Until this shift is made, respect will always be out of reach, replaced by fragile fantasies that never hold weight in real life. From the moment a girl becomes a woman, expectations begin to shape her life. And these expectations often come not from her own desires, but from the silent demands of society. Women are told how to act, how to look, and how to carry themselves in ways that serve the comfort of others. And yet the respect they receive rarely matches the weight of what is placed on them. This truth is visible everywhere, from workplaces where women must prove twice as much for half the recognition, to relationships where their worth is measured not by who they are, but by how well they fit into roles of partner, mother, or supporter. The pressure creates an unfair cycle. A woman who resists these expectations is often judged as difficult, while a woman who accepts them is often taken for granted. Respect becomes conditional, given only when she performs according to the script written for her. The result is that many women carry a quiet frustration, knowing they are seen for the roles they fulfill rather than the person they are. This is why respect feels absent, even when admiration or praise is present. Praise celebrates performance, but respect recognizes existence. Women are not respected when they are trapped under the weight of expectations that reduce them to functions instead of beings. The reality is that respect must come without conditions, without the demand that a woman must fit perfectly into someone else's image of who she should be. Until that shift happens, the gap between what women give and what they receive will remain wide, and many will continue to feel unseen beneath the very expectations that were meant to define their value. There is a silence many women live with, a silence that comes not from lack of thought or feeling, but from the experience of being dismissed too many times. In conversations, their voices are interrupted or overlooked. In workplaces, their ideas are repeated by others and credited elsewhere. And in relationships, their concerns are waved away as exaggerations. Over time, this silence is not a choice, but a survival strategy. It is easier to stay quiet than to fight endlessly to be heard. Yet this silence is not empty. It is filled with unspoken truths, with insights and emotions that never reach the surface, because the space to express them is rarely granted. The tragedy is that respect is impossible in such conditions. You cannot respect someone you do not truly listen to, and you cannot claim to value someone whose words you continually ignore. Many women know this reality deeply, which is why silence often feels heavier than words. It holds years of being unheard, and the quiet is louder than any argument. The respect that women desire is not grand or complicated. It is as simple as being acknowledged without having to fight for every word. When their silence is broken and finally received, it transforms relationships, workplaces, and communities. But when it remains, it becomes a wall that divides, leaving women feeling isolated even when they are surrounded by people. Respect begins with listening, and listening means giving space without rushing to control, correct, or diminish. Until this happens, women will continue to carry the weight of silence, and society will continue to lose the wisdom that lives within it. For women, beauty is often treated like both a gift and a curse, something that brings attention but rarely respect. From a young age, many are taught that their value lies in how attractive they appear, and this lesson follows them into every stage of life. Compliments about looks come more often than recognition of ideas, and judgments about appearance weigh heavier than acknowledgments of character. The burden is that beauty becomes a currency in a world that should measure worth differently, and women know the cost of it. A woman who is considered beautiful is often reduced to her looks, as if nothing else exists, while a woman who does not meet those standards is treated as invisible, as if she has nothing to offer. Neither position grants genuine respect. It is a trap that strips dignity from both ends. Even in modern times, when women step into positions of power, their appearance is still dissected before their achievements are considered. A speech or a decision may change lives, yet headlines linger on the way she dressed or the way she looked. The message is clear. Beauty overshadows substance, and the respect that should belong to the person is lost in the obsession with the surface. This is not only unfair, but exhausting, because it forces women to live under a pressure men rarely face, a pressure that says their bodies speak louder than their voices. Respect cannot survive under this weight. True respect arrives only when beauty is seen as one small part of a much larger whole, when a woman is valued not for how she appears, but for who she is. Until then, beauty will remain a burden, admired by many, but respected by few. What women have always wanted, beneath the layers of expectation, judgment, and silence, is the simple right to live freely without being measured by others. Freedom is not only about laws or opportunities, it is about the space to exist without being boxed into roles that suffocate individuality. A woman who chooses career over family is often judged as selfish, while a woman who chooses family over career is often judged as lacking ambition. No matter the choice, the criticism follows, showing that the real problem is not the choice itself, but the lack of respect for freedom. True respect is allowing women to live without constant justification, to speak without fear of being dismissed, to succeed without having their motives questioned, and to fail without being condemned more harshly than men. This struggle for freedom is seen in small details of daily life as much as in great political battles. It is in the hesitation before walking alone at night, in the caution of how to dress, in the calculation of how to speak so as not to be called too soft or too aggressive. These invisible limits remind women that their freedom is never fully given, only negotiated. And when freedom is conditional, respect cannot fully exist, because respect means acknowledging autonomy without control. Women do not ask to be placed above men, nor do they ask to be shielded from life. What they ask for is freedom that is not tied to permission, freedom that is lived as naturally as breathing. Until this becomes reality, women will continue to carry the weight of restrictions that men often overlook, and respect will remain incomplete, because without freedom, no form of respect can ever be whole.